Okay, thank you, everybody. And this is our last set of talks for the afternoon. And first, we're going to have Ron Schaik, yes, who's a professor of pharmacogenetics and registered European specialist in laboratory medicine in Rotterdam. And he's going to talk to us about pharmacogenetics in Europe. He's been particularly involved in clinical implementation projects. Ron. So, if you want to use the arrow, you have to use this mouse.
Okay, and for proceeding, just the enter.
Either the arrow or the right.
Excellent. Okay, Mary, thank you very much for the organization for the kind invitation to be here at this very special day. I enjoyed very much all the talks I already heard. And I will be happy to contribute a little by telling you what's going on in Europe. I will do that by explaining a little bit about my lab, so that's local, then national in the Netherlands, and then conquer Europe from that perspective, I think. Pharmacogenetics in Europe, like I said, a little bit from where I come from. I'm a clinical chemist, or as it's called now, European Specialist Laboratory Medicine. I have an appointment in Rotterdam, Erasmus MC, but also an appointment now in the University Medical Center in Utrecht, so covering two university medical centers. I've been quite amazed about all the abbreviations which you have been telling me this morning, so this is my return to you. I'm a task force leader, chair of the task force Pharmacogenetics from the International Federation of Clinical Chemistry. I will talk a little bit about that later on in the talk. I'm in the Personalized Medicine Board of AACC, so the American Association for Clinical Chemistry. This is the European Society for Pharmacogenomics and Personalized Therapy, where I'm chair of the Clinical Implementation Division, then EATDMCT, the European Federation of Laboratory Medicine, Golden Helix. Also involved in CPEC, advisor of the European Medicine Agency, chair of the European Pharmacogenetic Implementation Consortium. And you may think that I have a lot of time to spend, apparently, to be in all these committees. But actually, it's in my benefit because I hope that everybody will come up with the same guidelines, so that will save me time in the end. Okay, so pharmacogenetics, clinical implementation, it's all about this guy who we need to help because he has a problem, because he has these patients who have the same disease, prescribing the same drug therapy, but they react completely different. What we did at Erasmus MC is just offer the testing, basically. That's where it comes from. Make the test available from the laboratory medicine and see what the clinicians find out. And are they going to use it or are they not going to use it? That's the strategy which we chose. And as you can see now, Untitled is in Dutch, but CYP2D6 in Dutch is the same as in English, as you can see. So we are offering something like 20 tests for them, a lot of the cytochromes, some of the other enzymes, some of the transporters. And recently we switched to just giving like packages, DNA passport it says, or psychiatric panel, cardiac panel. And we found that this apparently for the clinicians is much easier to understand because a lot of requests we're getting there. So whether this is successful or not, just to share you for the 2015 what we have been seeing, we see a lot of 2D6 test requests, like 20%, DPYD 20%, HLA-B57 16%, 2C19 12%. So a little bit 50% cytochrome P450, 50% others. The amount of tests is increasing. The amount which we saw last year, 3,000 tests in a year in our laboratory. I have no idea if that's a lot or not. This year we anticipate to go up to 6,000 to 8,000 tests, and that's even the mild scenario. It may go up even further. We had to talk with an insurance company, and they are looking into if they can offer this pharmacogenetic testing for all their 300,000 insured people. So then I need much more people to hire to be able to do that because it's an old thing. So what do we have? Just 3 short slides. Psychiatry, for instance. Can we use pharmacogenetics? The averages are very nice, but if you plot in the individual patient, you will all recognize that the benefit pharmacogenetic testing is debatable. This is why psychiatrists say, well, it doesn't explain everything, so perhaps you should not use it. And if you're a little bit more optimistic, you say, well, at least we can identify the poor metabolizers who need like 25% of the standard dose. So should we or should we not implement? Oh, sorry, that went too fast. For instance, in breast cancer, hey, there's an automatic stay, yes. For instance, in breast cancer, there's a lot of papers showing that there's a relation between cytochrome 2d6 genotype and the effect, but also some articles who do not find that effect. Apparently, oncologists are still discussing on this. So the evidence as a scientific community is not carried by all the studies. So the point here is, should we now adapt this or should we not adapt this? And the third and final one is already mentioned several times, which is on the clopidogrel, in which the FDA has a boxed warning in there saying that you should consider cytochrome 2C19 genotype for the poor metabolizers. In Europe, I was quite surprised in the 2015 European Society of Cardiology guidelines, which came out in August, to see what they did with this information. And I was quite surprised and shocking to find that this is the sentence which is in there. It said, at present, genetic testing cannot be recommended in routine clinical practice due to insufficient prospective data. If you read this very quickly, you say, well, there's not enough evidence. But it doesn't say so. It said there's no prospective data. And the question, of course, is, do you need prospective data? This issue already came up in the panel discussion. There are very good papers in Lancet, in New England Journal. I think it's very well established that 2C19 genotype does matter. But apparently, the cardiologists, they want prospective data, and there has not been a prospective trial yet. So you can discuss whether you need this or not. When I was in Washington, like 5, 6, 7 years ago, we had a discussion also with the FDA about the drug label and the information. I learned there that it's not as much that information is in the drug label, but the big discussion is where it is in the drug label. Like a boxed warning is, of course, the most important one. And then one guy got up from the audience saying, like, I'm a doctor. You do not really think that I have the time to read all these drug labels. And then somebody else got up from the other side of the audience and said, well, I'm a lawyer. I can tell you I do have time to read drug labels. So I think this is an interesting discussion, and especially this particular case for clopidogrel. I think if a regulatory body like the FDA puts this kind of boxed warning in there, apparently based on evidence which is out there, how can a society from the medical group like the cardiologists say that there's not enough not enough evidence? And even if you would have, of course, a prospective study, you could still argue, is that enough prospective evidence? So I'm looking forward to the discussions on this kind of point. So we see a lot of pharmacogenetic testing. Like I said, there's an increase, but sadly enough, usually it's retrospective. So you give the drug to a patient, there's a side effect, and then we try to explain. Of course, we want to have it like prospective, preemptive genotyping to help those patients. And you want this doctor to get to the coffee machine and then tell you, like, okay, it's pharmacogenetics, what else? It's not that far yet. In the Netherlands, we thought also a lot from how should we proceed? Because in the beginning, it said that if you would have a specific drug and we would do the genotyping, then I got a call from the patient said, but I take a lot of other drugs as well. What does that mean? So with the Royal Dutch Pharmacogenetics Working Group, we started on evidence-based dosing guidelines. And those were developed. And the beauty is that this is available in every pharmacist in the Netherlands. So this is, I guess, one of the only things for which, as the Netherlands, we can compete a little bit with the US because the country is small. But every pharmacist in the Netherlands has access to how to dose based on the genotype. And the best thing is, it's all the same recommendation. That's also very important, I guess. So you can go up to your pharmacist with your DNA information. One of the aspects which then struck me is that I got a call from one of the pharmacists saying, well, I have a patient here, and the patient tells me I have a mutation, I cannot take any drugs. This is what a patient remembers for like an intermediate metabolizer for 2D6, your metoprolol should be like 50% of the standard dose. I have a mutation, I cannot take any drugs. So, of course, you would like to have electronic health records to transfer the information. There's a big discussion in the Netherlands. It's not happening yet. So, more or less at frustration, I moved on to that. By the way, I tried this. This is like where I live. Went to the local pharmacist, got in there to the guy behind the counter, and said, I'm depressed. I need imipramine. I'm a 2D6 poor metabolizer. I'm not, by the way, but this is for educational purposes. You understand that. I'm a 2D6 poor metabolizer. And then he looked up in the computer and he found here, perhaps not really to see, 2D6 poor metabolizer for imipramine, and it will tell him I need only 30% of the standard dose. So this is really actionable. This is really happening in the Netherlands. The only sad part is that I had to tell him it was in his computer. But we're getting there. That's education. So like I said, with this patient not having the proper information, so pure from frustration, we had this like credit card profile, pharmacogenetic profile, or DNA passport as it's now called in the Netherlands, showing like for the several enzymes out there, like the result, the enzyme, the result, metabolism, the prevalence in the population, and which genes was tested for. And apparently this got a lot of media attention. It made the 8 o'clock news and like 3-4 newspapers, and I thought it was just like frustration from my side. But we give this out to our patients now. Several hundreds are in the Netherlands. And for me, I have like my pharmacogenetic information here with me on my card. So apparently this is very much appreciated. So you can see that all of a sudden it's not the scientific evidence, but it's just access, easy access to information. And of course this card is meant to go to the pharmacist who can then look into his computer system how to dose based on the genotype. So I did the trick again because in Rotterdam we have a new pharmacist. So I went up there to the counter with my pharmacogenetic profile card, and she looked up immediately in the computer and saw that, you know, for as a 2D6 poor metabolizer, you should have like 30% of dimipramine. I was quite surprised. I said, wow, the last time I had to tell the guy behind the counter that it was in his computer. And the girl said, yeah, but I was in a meeting last week where you gave a presentation, so I remembered. So, okay. So pharmacogenetic testing in the Netherlands. There are at least 16 laboratories in the Netherlands who do pharmacogenetic testing. Just for your understanding, there's 17 million people in the Netherlands, so 16 labs and probably even more. So there is a huge access to pharmacogenetic testing at the moment. There's a little challenge, I think. If you look, for instance, at 2D6, one lab tests for 3 SNPs, the other for 8 SNPs, we test for 15 SNPs. So there's a need for harmonization. And so we started like a pharmacogenetics network in the Netherlands. And I'm quite happy to say that I'm chairing that. There's somebody from hospital pharmacy. This is from clinical genetics, epidemiology, clinical pharmacology, and a GP in there. And all the 16 labs are now part of this network, a little bit like PGRN, but done for clinical implementation to at least harmonize how we do the genetic testing and how we're going to give specific advices. So now let's move further. The experiences that we had in the Netherlands, we wanted to make that broader accessible. So from IFCC, looking mainly at Europe, the International Federation of Clinical Chemistry, it's in fact a network with more than 88 countries from laboratory medicine who are attached to that. So there's a lot of laboratories who feed into that. So we want to have knowledge, which we had, to spread it out to all these laboratory medicines, and to be able that access to testing is widely available. And it worked quite well. And you can see that, for instance, like Munir Mohamed and Henk-Jan Gugelaar from Leiden are part of that, and also like Mark Linder from USA. It's a small group, but feeding information into laboratory medicine so that they can provide a test and also give information about the value of this kind of testing. The second initiative in Europe, which arose in 2012, the other one was in 2009, this 2012, is the European Society of Pharmacogenomics and Personalized Medicine, or Therapy, ESPT, more than 800 members. And this is not only clinical implementation, this is more broad. So you can see here there's like a scientific and clinical implementation division. I'm chairing that one. Also like a communication and external relations division, an education and course division, and congress and meeting division. So this is like broader, more structured, and at this moment I think a very good initiative to at least have information on pharmacogenetics spread to Europe and also facilitate clinical implementation. And the presidency is from Gérard Stiès from France, who has a long-standing career in clinical chemistry as well. But the most interesting part was in 2015 when there is this funding program called Horizon 2020, which fits very nicely with the topic of today's session, looking at this particular call. It's a 5-year grant for 15 million euros. I thought that was a lot. I heard that PGRN had like 36 million per year, so we're a little bit dwarfed there. But they wanted an initiative to change healthcare, they said, based on personalized medicine. So then we had a challenge. What are we going to do? To get like pharmacogenomics working, for a test to be accepted, where to focus on? Is it on the clinical evidence? That was the discussion which we were just having. Or should we make the test available to, for instance, pharmacologists, health insurers, general public clinicians, to see what they do with it. If they actually have hands-on experience with pharmacogenetics, perhaps that's the barrier which is still lacking for implementation. So we were kind of having a discussion how to do that, and we could not really solve that. So we did a two-way approach. We wrote 2 projects for the European Union. So I was chairing the one on the European Pharmacogenetics Implementation Consortium, UPIC, focusing on developing laboratories for the test, easy access. It's like 18 countries and 7 pharmacogenetic tests. And Professor Henk-Jan Gugelaar from the Leiden University, he wrote a project more or less the same, but then focusing on better evidence, then focusing on 6 countries and more like 13 pharmacogenetic tests. And just have the European Union decide which projects they like best. This is in February 2015, where the 2 consortia were together, the kickoff meeting. As you can see, there's a lot of people involved there. From the UPIC, you can see that we have, like, for instance, Munir Primomet and Magnus Ingemann Sundberg as driving forces of pharmacogenetics to help us. And we were very happy also to have a very large external advisory board with, for instance, Michael Eichenbaum and also Mary Relling and Dick Weinschelbaum. So in that way, we presented it to the European Union. And this is the spread in Europe for all the countries which are in there, 18 countries, 37 institutes, and 106 participants. Like a very broad network in Europe for exchange of information. And most of the laboratories which are in here, they are already doing pharmacogenetics. So it's the exchange of information and see how we can provide that further. We did not have to set up pharmacogenetic testing. So the main part of this project, is the center of this project, is in fact making pharmacogenetic testing available from the laboratory medicine part, with the idea that there would be an additional catch-on from the clinicians. In that you need like a quality program, reimbursement, you have dissemination of knowledge, scientific trials, health technology assessments, all the other aspects which you would really need. So the bad news is this did not get funded. Or perhaps it's the good news, because it's a lot of administration work as well. Is this that bad for the network? Well, when we looked at this, it's not that bad, because we kind of dropped these ones out, like developing new genotyping platforms and the scientific trials and health technology assessment. But if you look at the rest, it's already available. We do not even need the 15 million. We have to skip the preemptive genotyping, but we already have pharmacogenetic testing in this laboratory. There is a EU network. There is a quality program for proficiency program already for pharmacogenetics. There is evidence-based dosing guidelines. And the dissemination of knowledge through ESPT and IFCC is already there. So we will continue this network, because I think we got a lot of positive replies, and there's a lot of interest to going on with this particular part. Now the good news, and that's the last slide, the good news is that pharmacogenetics did get funded by the other project. So yes, there is 15 million euros available from Europe, in the European Union, to look on pharmacogenetics. And this particular project is focusing on providing more evidence, compelling evidence, and to see if that would be the driving force in Europe to get this further. And I would love to talk about this one, but happily enough, Jesse Sven here at the front is also here. So that's why we decided to have like a dual presentation, and he will share with you the setup of this particular project. Thank you very much for your attention.